let's turn now to friend of the program and is your title ED, executive director, or of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus?
Oh, yes, vice president.
Can you tell us a little bit who the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus is as well, for folks that don't know, because people have to understand what the group is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Gun Owners Caucus, were a nonpartisan, single-issue organization dedicated to protecting and defending the rights of Minnesota's law-abiding gun owners.
Okay, thank you.
And so you all put out a statement, I think it was this morning, or was it yesterday, about the situation this morning, that was very striking. And could you sort of summarize kind of your thoughts on, after seeing the video and all this, your perspective on the Amir Locke shooting?
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a couple of different unique perspectives. Brian, our chair, is a former law enforcement officer. My degree's in law enforcement, and I've got another degree in criminal justice. And I'm a post-eligible peace officer, and I used to work for the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. So we're no strangers to what proper police procedures are. And when we listened to, or when we saw the reports, the suspect, because it was mentioned 4 times, grabbed a gun. And, at first, when you read the report, you're like, okay, well, if you're a suspect in a murder and you grab a gun when cops are in the room, you can kind of expect to be shot. But then when we saw the video, after learning that that Amir Locke was indeed not a suspect, that the warrant was not for any individual, but to recover evidence in a murder investigation. And then that after watching the video, we knew we had to come out with a statement, because Amir Locke, at least to us, seemed to act exactly how any law-abiding gun owner would when they're confronted with 5 or 6 people yelling conflicting commands in their face, shining lights as you're trying to wake up in that first morning haze of trying to figure out what's going on. And then you hear all this noise going on. You don't know if it's in your apartment, if it's outside your apartment, if it's next door. He grabs his gun. You can see very clearly in the photo, his finger is indexed along the side of the frame, which is exactly what a good gun owner does, because you don't put your finger on your trigger until you're ready to shoot and until you've identified your target. And then he's dead.
Oh. And that fast, as about as you just described it.
Yeah.
It took me longer to describe
honestly,
that than it actually happened.
And I know a lot of folks that keep guns and sometimes close at hand because of home protection. And I will stand up and say, you get to protect your home. And I know lots of folks that would say, you're going to come into my house, that I get to protect myself. And so I'm wondering, because your organization is nonpartisan, I would say and I know you have endorsed and worked with both sides of the aisle. I would assume predominantly Republican, or probably percentage-wise more Republican lawmakers. Has there been pushback? Because I'm fascinated at the Republicans who would absolutely say, you don't get to come to my home, I get to protect my home. And I would be one of them. Who might push back. I'm curious if you've gotten pushback, or if you've been largely people saying, you're right, Rob.
It's mixed for sure. We're getting threats from people who aren't members to cancel their memberships, and lots of things like that. People accusing us of aligning ourselves with BLM and Antifa. We're no strangers to this controversy. We came out very much. We came out in support of Philando Castile after he was killed as another permit holder who informed an officer that he was carrying, and then was shot shortly thereafter. That we waded into these controversial topics because the fact that we don't care particularly about allegiance to a particular party or a particular ideal. I've got former friends of mine that I went to skills with who are cops right now, who have unfriended and blocked me because there seems to be this just false expectation that there has to be a dichotomy. You're either supporting the individual or you're supporting law enforcement. If you do support one, then you're opposing the other. It's very possible that the officers in this instance were presented with information and they acted on the information that they had without any sort of malice or any deviation of policy. I think there's two separate incidents that happened here. Everything that went up until they opened the door and everything that happened after they opened the door. why was a no-knock warrant issued in this case?
Yeah.
All of those questions, when it should have been a daytime knock and announce warrant where Amir would have had the ability to wake up, go to the door and ask what's up, and then he'd still be alive and the cops would have still had whatever evidence they were looking for. But I think the pushback comes from people who expect us to do one thing or expect us to blindly support law enforcement. And it's been a little bit interesting to see that we're getting hate from both sides, so we must be doing something right.
I want to read a couple sentences from your statement because I think they're very powerful. It says, Mr. Locke was not a suspect in the crime for which the warrant was issued and was not named at all in the search warrant. And by the way, I'm just sitting with this and I missed in all of this
that it wasn't a person.
Assume that there were individuals named, and Davis, and our listener and friend of the program, I am freaked out by how horrible that is. But your statement continues, Rob. The tragic circumstances of Mr. Locke's death were completely avoidable, stated DOAR. It's yet another example where a no-knock warrant has resulted in the death of an innocent person. In this case, as in others, the public should expect and receive full transparency and accountability from law enforcement agencies that serve and protect our local communities. Amir Locke, a lawful gun owner, should still be alive, said Brian Strasser. Black men, like all citizens, have a right to keep and bear arms. Black men, like all citizens, have the right to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure. So Rob, I hear how do you resolve, for yourselves and your members, right? This, because there is an assumption that your group would be, knee-jerk for law enforcement. What do you say to folks beyond we're obviously, we think you're being consistent, but the pressure must be intense at moments like this.
Yeah, I mean, it is. The good thing about us is that as long as we're consistent, we don't really need to worry about explaining one way or the other why we're not doing one thing or not doing another thing. We've very, very consistently said that civil rights are for everybody. We have a booth at Twin Cities Pride every year, and we get lots of hisses and lots of side eyes and things like that. But we're there promoting the right of people for self-defense. One of our allied groups, the Pink Pistols, they're an LGBTQ plus gun rights group. They're there with us, and we hold firm that civil rights and the right to self-defense, the right to keep and bear arms, is one of those core fundamental constitutional rights. It is just as American as your right to free speech. And every citizen, regardless of race, regardless of what they believe, regardless of whatever pronouns they pick, deserves to exercise their right to be free from oppressive annihilation, whether that's from a criminal entity or whether that's from a government entity.
I have a question. So, Rob, and if you're not the appropriate person to answer this, I apologize. But, having never done criminal law, I'm not 100% clear. So it's certainly not the rank and file police officers who make any kind of decision on what kind of warrant they're issued. They go where they're told. Who ultimately determines whether, what time of day they go, what type of warrant it is? Is it someone within the police department? Is it someone within the county attorney's office? What's the correct kind of chain of command there?
Yeah, so every warrant that's issued in Minnesota has to have a probable cause affidavit, and that affidavit is filled by whatever officer is seeking the evidence. So in this case, it may have been a detective who was working on the homicide case or another officer. They have to fill out specifically, in line with the Fourth Amendment, the persons or places to be searched and the things that are to be seized. They have to notify that. Now, if they're requesting a no-knock warrant, they also have to explain why a daytime warrant wouldn't be acceptable. I think it's 626.14. They have to go through and say, we can't execute this between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. because, and we can't knock and announce because, and they have to be able to convince a judge to sign off on that reason. Now, that being said, there are a good amount of law enforcement officers who know which judges they want to go to in order to get signatures. So if they know that maybe their information isn't quite as strong as it would be, they may have a preferred judge that they go to seek that. So there may be some opportunity for judicial oversight here, but at the very least, every search warrant has to have that affidavit, which explains what they're looking for, why they believe that it's evidence in a crime, and then if they're seeking a no-knock warrant, which, as you guys just reported, St. Paul wasn't seeking that; it was Minneapolis that insisted on it. They have to explain why it has to be a no-knock warrant. And the justifications for a no-knock warrant are, one, that if you don't use a no-knock warrant, that evidence is going to be irrecoverably destroyed. So if you don't get in there quick, somebody might ditch the evidence or destroy it or whatever the case may be. Or two, that if you knock, there may be a substantial risk to officer safety or public safety. It seems like an initial knee-jerk reaction would say to get rid of all no-knock warrants. I probably sympathize with that. If my options were either we have to tolerate innocent people dying so that we can go and get evidence, or there's no no-knock warrants, I would choose no no-knock warrants every day of the week. But if you imagine a situation where maybe if you do knock, you give somebody the opportunity to grab a child as a human shield, a hostage situation, there may be situations that call for that, but I imagine those should be few and very few far between.
Amy?
Yeah. I maybe again you're the wrong person, but I'm wondering about the reforms. Yeah.
So during one of the special sessions in 2021, they sought some pretty severe reforms. There were even some efforts to ban them altogether. What they landed on was something pretty scaled back. They added in some extra accountability steps, like that if you wanted a no-knock warrant, that the chief law enforcement officer, so that would be the sheriff or the police chief, would have to review the application and approve it. So did the chief approve this one? She must have, or she must have designated somebody to review those approvals. So this is what gets me very frustrated, and something that's very consistent with MPD. We do a lot of data practices act requests, and MPD is consistently like 1 to 2 years before they get you the information that you requested. And it seems like whenever there's an opportunity to give some light, to give some information, they seem to choose the path of dragging their feet. I think Paul Bloom just tweeted out that the documents are sealed now, so now we're not going to get any of that.
That's from Fox 9, right? Paul Bloom from Fox 9. Yeah.
But if they could release the affidavit, and then the police chief can go out and say, "Here's why we believed warrant was necessary." Right. We might have some better context. We might have a better idea of why this happened. But every minute that they sit there and drag their feet and they say, "I don't know," and hem and ha, it only makes people more angry, more distrustful, and allows for more speculation to grow.
Well, that's interesting. Why do you think there has been so much interest? Have people asked pretty much the same questions we have, or?
Yeah, I mean, Ben Crump actually called us out by name today and thanked us for supporting the family. So I think that had something to do with it. But I think that all too often, politicians and politically aligned groups don't want to risk upsetting anybody, so they don't wade into the uncomfortable waters. But for us, we're very comfortable always standing on what we believe are the rights of law-abiding gun owners. And what really fascinates me is the same people who are pounding on their keyboards that they're ready at a moment's notice to take on government agents who are going to try to remove their guns. When they see somebody who is essentially shot at point blank range, who did nothing wrong other than wake up and not understand what was going on and grab his gun in self-defense. Not that that's even wrong. And yet they're going to blast us for standing up for Amir Locke's right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, and killing a person. Graham versus Connor is a seizure. That is a Fourth Amendment violation. So it's easy for us. It's easy for me to sleep at night being consistent. And I think that some people just don't expect groups like ours to wade into those controversial waters.
I've known Rob a long time. I've known Brian Strauser a long time, and I just really, really, really want to commend you guys, because political courage is something that is in short supply out there, and you guys took a strong stand for something you believed in, knowing that you were going to catch hell from it. And you don't seem worried about that at all. So I respect very much what you said. I very much respect what you're saying here and how you're educating our listeners and myself. And I just want to thank you and very proud.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.